Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 75. I am Dave Bryan from SteelersDepot.com, and I am doing the intro today. So that means Alex Kozora is not with me today. He's been battling the flu. He's been trying to play through it like Cam Hayward did against the Cincinnati Bengals this past weekend. It got too much for him. He every time I send him away and tell him to rest, he ends up showing back around, trying to do too much. I downgraded, and he downgraded himself to out today. So with Alex getting a well-deserved day off on this Tuesday morning, pleased to have back with me. You've heard him on the show several times over the years, filling in. One, Josh Carney with SteelersDepot.com. So with that, Josh, happy Tuesday. It's been a while since you and I have done one of these together.
Happy Tuesday. It has been a while. Glad to be back on. Glad to have Alex getting a non-injury rest day as a veteran here for illness, unfortunately, but hopefully he's able to recover here quickly ahead of this playoff game I'm sure we'll get into.
Josh, I think we just celebrated how many years with you with the site?
Oh man, I want to say
nine.
8 or 9. Yeah, I got to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it's 9. Yeah, so I've been around a while. I'm starting to get gray in the beard. I'm doing my best Cam Hayward impersonation here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and you've moved all over the place too. You've been Pittsburgh to Colorado and back to Pittsburgh again. It's kind of seeing your children grow up in the pictures and all like that. So anyway, it's good to have you as a emergency third quarterback to put it in. You and the guys are fixing to go out to Texas again here pretty soon as well too. So you're pretty excited to get back down to the Shrine Bowl again. You kind of like probably a mayor down there. They probably know you and try to buy you lunch by now, right?
I'll tell you what, yeah, I'm pretty well known down there. The whole Steelers Depot crew is known well down there. Joe Clark's going to be there. Dr. Mel, I think you know this, Dave. She'll go up to anybody and everybody and talk to him and make relationships with them. So, yeah, we're excited to get down there again here in a couple weeks. And it looks like, at least initially, this might be the best roster that Shrine Bowl has had. So very excited to see some of those prospects.
I have been, I obviously on Twitter all day, and I see some of the reports coming in of the invitations, and don't really start diving into the draft stuff until, the Steelers season ends. I know, obviously top players and all like that. Has there been anybody that's really stuck out on that invitation list of the Shrine Bowl that's kind of got your antenna up already?
Yeah, I mean, I know that quarterback's always going to be a big thing. They got Shedeur Sanders to commit to that about a month ago, so that's going to be massive. He's got all of his weapons coming as well. There's I think 3 receivers from Colorado that are going to be there. I believe it was yesterday they secured the invitation for North Dakota State's quarterback Cam Miller, and they just won the FCS championship, I believe, last night.
That was a hell of a game.
Yeah, and ended on a punt. That was always fun to see. But there's a number of guys that are going to be there. It looks like it's a strong offensive and defensive line crop again. But I think Shedeur, it being the big headliner there, he's probably going to be a top 2, top 3 pick. That means Deion Sanders is going to be there. It's going to be a big show down in Texas. So we're looking forward to it. There's going to be a lot of talent that we'll bring to everyone at Steelers Depot. And I know that Dr. Mel is chomping at the bit to talk to Jordan Clark, Ryan Clark's son. He will be there at the Shrine Bowl representing Notre Dame. So a lot of really good talent that we're seeing on paper so far.
All right, I certainly look forward to the coverage that the crew will be going that way with, and we'll obviously have a crew going to the Senior Bowl as well, and then not too long after that, combine stuff as well too. So, Josh, where we kind of picked up at, we originally had Alex and I did a Sunday morning podcast to kind of quickly run through the game against the Bengals. We thought we might do one on Monday, pending kind of what the schedule would be for the Steelers. Obviously, before we recorded that, we did not know for sure who the Steelers would be playing. We now know, obviously, the Steelers will be on the road against the Ravens on Saturday night. Obviously, in Baltimore, a game that's going to be shown on Amazon Prime outside of the Pittsburgh market. The Mike Tomlin press conference was moved up another day to Monday again, so we'll have a lot to talk about there. So let's start at the top with the Steelers having to go to Baltimore to play the Ravens, who've been playing very, very well as of late. The Ravens, I think, kind of open, 8.5 point spread on that. I think that's grown now to 10. This is a tall task for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
It very much is, and it's unfortunate that obviously they lost the AFC North, and now to pour salt into the wound, they've got to go down to Baltimore and take on this red hot team in the first round in the wild card matchup. It's not the matchup many were hoping for. With the way the end of the season was going, you were hoping they would at least beat Cincinnati and kind of lock themselves into that 5 seed and take on a depleted Texans team. But that's what happens when you lose 4 games in a row and kind of fall off a cliff. You don't get to pick and choose who you play, and unfortunately, it's an AFC North team that you're familiar with. I'm sure it's going to do wonders for Hard Knocks, but this is going to be a tall task for the Steelers. Not only have they backed into the playoffs with 4 losses in a row, but you're going against a team that just put it on you 2 weeks ago. So it's going to be very difficult for the Steelers to go into this hostile environment and find a way to beat this team.
Yeah, I forgot Hard Knocks is later on tonight. That won't be very enjoyable to watch. No. But with it being Cincinnati and the Steelers playing this past week, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more coverage than there was. I think. Have you been keeping up with the Hard Knocks?
I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Some weeks it's good. Some weeks it's rather ugly. And I know the last 2 shows have been rather ugly.
Mm-hmm. So. All right. The way I look at this playoff game coming up, and Mike Tomlin, when he spoke, he said that, that's the tax that you pay for not winning the division there. Kind of early thoughts on just, you look at the playoff lineup and all like that. My thoughts are, obviously, I'm not very optimistic going into this, and it's hard to be the way this team has played over the last 4 games here to end out the season. And, on the flip side, the way the Ravens are playing heading into the playoffs and all. But I will say this, man, if you find a way to beat this Ravens team on the road, it feels like they could potentially beat any team in the AFC. Is that the way that, obviously it's going to take a perfect game on both sides of the football, probably more of a low scoring game, kind of typical rock'em sock'em Ravens Steelers type of game that we have seen several times over the years. But man, if you go on the road and you put together a good game on both sides of the football and you beat the Ravens, I mean, is this pound for pound the toughest team in the AFC heading into the playoffs?
I think it is. I know, like I said, it's a tall task, but this is a Ravens team that's playing some great football. The defense, I don't think I've seen a turnaround like the Ravens have had defensively. I think it culminated, or it started really with Dean Pease coming in, but you go from they were the 32nd ranked passing defense in the league. I think now in the last few weeks, they've been the best defense in the league. They have a great running game. We saw that in the last matchup against the Steelers where Derrick Henry ran wild all game long. This team is very tough. I know they're a little banged up, but if the Steelers find a way to go on the road into M&T Bank Stadium and beat this team in the wild card round, you kind of have to feel good about the Steelers' chances moving forward, because this Ravens team, there's really, at least from my viewing perspective, there's no real flaw with this team. If Zay Flowers can't go, that's a big blow for them. That could hurt the passing game, but it's a really good offensive line. They've got a great run game. Todd Monken knows how to call a game pretty well, as we've seen all season long. And this defense, I mean, they've figured something out. They've been able to get after the quarterback. They've been able to stop the run. They're creating turnovers, keeping a lid on things in the passing game. But yeah, if the Steelers find a way to win this game, all bets are off with what this team could do moving forward.
Yeah, they've moved Kyle Hamilton back in the back end of that thing, and they are super. Put it to you this way: we don't have a lot of studying to do ahead of this game because obviously several weeks just recently we had to go through the tape again because of the second meeting and then the first meeting between the two teams. So just like in real life here, these teams know each other really well. So there's not a lot of prep on both sides of this thing going into it. And obviously, should somehow the Steelers go on the road and beat the Ravens, and then obviously depending on what Denver does, that would send, if the Steelers win, then as a lower seed there, they would go on the road to Kansas City. And yeah, things didn't go well in that meeting a couple of weeks ago against Kansas City. But if there's a team in the AFC that might be kind of one of the higher seeds that's more vulnerable, it might be Kansas City, because you look at some of the numbers that they put up offensively, and they will. I think this is the first time that we'll see a team go as many days as they're probably going to go without starters playing. And obviously they rested a lot of people in their finale just over the weekend here, and this will be a true testament to, do you really want to get the one seed and sit players for 20 days or whatever it ends up being. So it all starts with the Steelers having to win on the road in Baltimore. Alex and I will start previewing that. Maybe you and I will get into that a little bit later on the show here, but let's look ahead here to what Mike Tomlin, Josh, had to say on Monday during his press conference, and kind of more than anything, starting with the injury aspect of this. Mason McCormick has a broken hand, Mike Tomlin says. He'll be sized for a cast and or brace and check functionality there. And so his participation and quality of his participation will be kind of an indication of his potential availability as we push forward. He also mentioned that Donte Jackson was held out last week with an ongoing back issue. He feels good this morning being Monday morning, but again, we'll watch him throughout the course of the week. We'll see his participation does in terms of possibility of his inclusion. And then Tomlin said the old other players with bumps and bruises associated to play. So I imagine the injury list will probably include some rested players and maybe some limited guys. We'll obviously see what happens with Mason McCormick and Donte Jackson Tuesday afternoon on the injury report. And Cam Hayward was sent home yesterday because he obviously battled through the flu. You wouldn't have known it the way he was playing on the field the other night against the Bengals overall there. But Cam Hayward should be healthy enough, obviously, and hopefully over the flu by the time that Saturday night rolls around against the Ravens there. Mason McCormick, it will be interesting to see that play out. Alex had dug through some of the tape yesterday afternoon. It looks like he injured that on the touchdown to Pat Freiermuth. Cordell Patterson was trying to get out of pass coverage. The two kind of collided there. You could see Mason kind of look at his left hand at that point. That is the inside hand for him, being the right guard. So yeah, we'll have to watch Mason McCormick this week.
Yeah, we will. And if he's able to go, kudos to him. But that's going to be a tough task, having that thing casted up and basically be playing with a club on your inside hand against Baltimore. Nnamdi Madubuike, Michael Pierce, that's going to be difficult if he's able to go. Fortunately, the Steelers do have Spencer Anderson as kind of his backup. He has plenty of experience from earlier in the year. But overall, though, it seems like the Steelers are entering this wild card game relatively healthy. I know Donte Jackson, the back injury, I think he's been dealing with that since November at this point. It seems like he's been in and out of the lineup, within games and obviously missed last week. But they just seem relatively healthy. You hope that Cam Hayward is the only one that's dealing with the flu in that locker room. You would hate to see the flu spread through that locker room and kind of debilitate them before this wild card matchup. But all eyes are on Mason McCormick and to see what he can do this week from a participation standpoint, because he's had some moments this year. He's been a little up and down, but when you talk about a guy that brings that toughness, that nastiness to that group, he's kind of the tone setter. And if you don't have that, that's a big blow.
Right. And from a pass protection standpoint, I think he's been more consistent and better throughout the season. Mm-hmm. From a run blocking standpoint, it's been kind of peaks and valleys with him. You go back and you look at this tape, run blocking tape from the game against the Bengals, and it was a mess. I mean, not just him, but across the board. And then on top of it, both of your tackles weren't great in pass protection. There, even Mason McCormick kind of got bowled over back into Russell Wilson on at least one of those snaps there. The thing that I want to point out about the Mason McCormick thing that I pointed out on Twitter yesterday there, obviously if he's unable to go, Spencer Anderson would get to start. But this team, because right now they only have 8 offensive linemen on their active 53-man roster, we should get a good idea later on in the week if at worst Mason McCormick can maybe dress and at least be a backup, because this team has to, because of the rules, needing to, if they want to dress 48 players against the Ravens, they have to have at least 8 offensive linemen active, and they only have 8 on the 53 right now. So if they're going to dress 8 and make and don't think Mason McCormick can play, well, then they'll have to elevate somebody off of the practice squad. Probably the afternoon. Let's see, that's a Saturday. I think they could do it earlier in the afternoon there. So by 4:00 Eastern time on Saturday, if there's not a elevation from a practice squad for an offensive lineman, that's a good sign that at the very least Mason McCormick will dress for that game. And then, he could obviously still be the backup to Spencer Anderson, but we'll have to watch that play out. And look, this team, you talk about Donte Jackson, this team has had at least one cornerback inactive for the last several games. And, they threw Corey Trice Jr. kind of more into the fire in this game against the Bengals. Overall, I thought, for what he was asked to do, I thought he played well in this game, especially when you consider the quality of competition having to go up against in that Bengals game, Bengals team. We could very well get in a situation where if Donte Jackson's not 100%, he's back on the inactive list against the Ravens, and Corey Trice Jr. would once again probably get to start opposite Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, and the fortunate thing, going back to Mason McCormick and the offensive line there, the Steelers do have some options on the practice squad that have some experience. Dylan Cook is still there. John the Glue, I think people still remember him and some of the work he did a few years ago. He could be that swing guy. And then they still have Doug Nestor as well, who played guard and tackle in college. But I think where I'm most concerned with is if Donte Jackson can't go, you're pretty thin there. Do you try and elevate another defensive back there just to be safe? But it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out here moving into Saturday and what they do from a roster standpoint, who's active, who's inactive. I would think if McCormick doesn't start, he's probably going to be inactive. You'd hate to see something happen to Spencer Anderson, and then you're putting a limited guy and McCormick in there. I do think Corey Trice played well. If being left on an island against Jamar Chase isn't the best game plan specific thing there from the Steelers, but I thought he held his own there, especially after that early touchdown. Tackled very well, didn't miss a tackle in that game, and I think he led the Steelers with 11 stops. But there's going to be some roster manipulation here, some roster movement from the Steelers that's going to be worth monitoring here entering Saturday's kickoff.
Yeah, we'll know that by Saturday afternoon. They're talking about Corey Trice Jr. And you do the tackle reports and all like that. And I think the thing that stood out the most about his play was his ability to, you saw him come up on a couple of run plays, make some run stops. You saw him out in space after some catches, unfortunately having to make some tackles, but he was physical there. Mike Tomlin was asked during his Monday press conference about his evaluation of Corey Trice Jr. And of course, he's not going to throw a young player like that under the bus, but he thought what really I thought. He says, I thought largely he did some nice things. Corey Trice is a hardworking guy. He doesn't have a lot of experience experience. It was really good experience for him, and it's reasonable to expect him to build upon that. And really, that says it all, because this is a kid that obviously missed his rookie season because of the knee injury. Came back this year for first couple of games, and then went down with what was it, hamstring, I think.
Yes.
With him, hadn't logged a lot of snaps up until recently. Heck, he might not even be. How many snaps does he have on the season right now overall on defensive side? Let me see if I can pull that up real quick there. What I'm getting at, obviously, is he's still very, very green overall from an NFL perspective. He's played, it looks like, 194, so not even 200 total snaps on the defensive side of football. He played 29 total in the first 3 weeks of the season. And since then is when the other, let's see, he played almost 70 against the Bengals. And that was obviously a career high for him as well, too. So, if that's the way you got to go, that's the way you got to go. And as you kind of alluded to at the top there, we'll be watching the status of Zay Flowers. It doesn't feel like he's going to be able to go, but it obviously still is early in the week. John Harbaugh kind of called him day to day, I think. But if he does play, it doesn't feel like he's going to be 100%, but we'll obviously be watching that moving forward into this week. Let's see, moving on into kind of some of the other things that Mike Tomlin was asked about. George Pickens. Obviously, George Pickens did not have the best of games against the Bengals. Uncharacteristic drops for him. Mike Tomlin, in so many words, said he's expecting him to bounce back, and then and said, you don't really see George Pickens drop passes like you did in that game against the Bengals, but he did, and so he has to own it. But he wasn't alone in that. As a follow-up question that you probably, if you were going to put odds on him being asked, there was that footage during the game against the Bengals that makes it look like George Pickens was on the sideline having it out with a fan, had to be kind of calmed down by Pat Freiermuth there. Mike Tomlin says, I have no idea what you're referring to, so that's news to me. So I'd be speculating if I commented on it in any way. Is this Mike Tomlin Mike Tomlin's probably more omnipresent than even I am on with the Depot. You kind of see and have a pulse on everything at all the times. Is this just Mike Tomlin trying to push this stuff off another week? I mean, obviously, we've talked quite a bit about George Pickens and, stuff either between the white lines that isn't appetizing, or on the sideline or in the locker room and all like that. Did Mike Tomlin see this and just wanting to put this off another week? There's no way he didn't see this, right?
Yeah, there's no way that maybe he didn't see it live, but there's no way he didn't know about it entering, Monday's press conference. I think this is just him, like you said, trying to put this off another week, keep the focus on Baltimore. He knows he needs George in the right headspace if they want a chance to win this game, and you don't really want to be throwing George under the bus publicly, as the head coach in any circumstance, but especially in this one, coming off of his worst game ever. I definitely think this was just pushing it off another week, hoping to get to the off season and maybe address some of this stuff. But it was not a good look for George Pickens on Saturday. You had the 3 crucial drops. Then the video, emerged from ESPN. As you mentioned, it looked like he was jawing at a fan. He had to be calmed down on the sidelines by Pat Freiermuth. There was also a shot of Russell Wilson talking to him as well. I definitely think this was just Tomlin giving an answer to satisfy the reporter's question, but also trying to keep this off another week and keep the focus on Baltimore and hope that George is in the best headspace, because he's had a tough time getting back on the moving train, in a sense, coming back off of that injury. We've never seen him drop passes like he did on Saturday night. There was some concern that maybe it was due to some focus issues because he wasn't involved early on, but I think Tomlin just knows he needs George Pickens and he needs him at least one more week. So this was just satisfying a question, pushing it off another week, I think.
if they're going to win this game against Baltimore, they need George Pickens to have a George Pickens type game, and by that, at least 3 or 4 catches, with a couple of those being down the field. Obviously, in the last, I looked this up yesterday, the last 4 games, of which George Pickens obviously missed a few of them with his injury. This team has 8 total explosive plays of 20 yards or more. 9 if you want to count the play against the Eagles that Justin Fields scrambled, I think got 8 yards and a 15-yard penalty on top of it. But traditional 8 explosive plays, that's obviously 2 per game. That isn't the only reason why this team went 0-4 down the stretch there, but it certainly did not help. The thing about this, on top of it, is he missed the second game against the Ravens, and that was the one that, kind of leading up to it, you kind of wondered if he was going to play to get the rematch against the Ravens. He's got to be licking his chops. This is a statement game in some way of George Pickens, because the media is going to be on him once again this week because of the game that he had against the Bengals. It will be interesting to see if because I don't think he talked to the media after the game against the Bengals. You would think at some point he's going to be put out in front of the scrum in the locker room towards the end of the week. Interesting to see how he does handle that. But, make no mistake about it, this team has got to have George Pickens in the right place for this game on the road against Baltimore. We've had the Ravens players come out. I know you've seen this. We wrote about it yesterday. They were all asked to sample the Lamar Jackson new cologne, and you can hear them in the background. I don't know which players it was. I can probably make an educated guess, but they said that perfume smells kind of soft like George Pickens. So we wrote about it. It's going to be talked about for the rest of this week here. They're already trying to get underneath the skin of George Pickens. I would imagine throughout the game on Saturday, they're going to be trying to get under the skin of George Pickens. We've got to see a top-notch George Pickens game.
Absolutely. And he didn't play in the last matchup against the Ravens. He's got to be licking his chops, go against the secondary again. But the Ravens, they know what they're doing with these comments in the locker room with the cameras around. They're trying to get under Pickens' skin. They know that he hears it all. He sees it all. He takes it to heart. He lets it affect him. From everything we've seen in the 3 years of Pickens in a Steelers jersey, he's not very mentally tough when it comes to that stuff on the field and what's said to him and all that. But the Steelers need him to be locked in. They need a huge bounce back game. Tomlin said Monday that he's expecting that. I think Steelers fans should expect that. This is a huge statement game, like you said. He's coming off of his worst performance in the NFL. 1 catch, 0 yards, 3 drops. He didn't speak to the media. He's probably going to be trotted out there again this week, and the reporters are going to get after him. It'll be very curious to see how he handles it this week. But he's got to find a way to be in the right headspace here, and the leaders on this team have got to make sure that they are doing everything they can to make sure George Pickens is ready to go for Saturday, because they need him to step up and have a George Pickens-like game. He's got to have an impact early. It wouldn't shock me if the Steelers come out throwing early to try and get him involved, get him locked in, kind of probe this Ravens secondary early on. But I hate to say a game comes down to one guy's performance, but if the Steelers don't have the George Pickens that we saw earlier in the year, it feels like they really don't have a shot.
Right, and they're going to have to put up more than 2 explosive plays in this game.
Yes.
They're obviously going to have to win the turnover battle, probably by at least +2 when it comes to that. They're probably going to have to win the explosive play battle by at least +1 or +2 on top of it. And when you're talking about a Ravens offense, that you're probably going to expect to throw up, I don't know, 3-4 explosive plays at least on their own, you're going to have to push the football down the field. You're definitely not going to be able to turn the football over and win this football game. All right, moving on to some of the other things. We got the traditional, I am open to using Justin Fields in this, moving forward here into this game, and also kind of an open to using Mike Williams more in this game. Should they have, especially maybe in some short yardage packages, even if it means throwing in those situations, Justin Fields, should we see Justin Fields on the field 3, 4, 5, 6 snaps against the Ravens?
I think we should, especially being able to utilize his legs, whether it's in short yardage or just in general. I think the Steelers need to, turn over every stone and try and find a way to create some of these explosive plays like you were talking about. I'm not expecting Fields to come in and be that savior and create an explosive play on almost every touch, but you've got to have him out there 5, 6 times, give the Ravens a different look. Do whatever you can to utilize Fields' best skill set, and that's his legs, and that gives the Ravens something extra to have to defend. It could open things up for Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren in the run game. It could create an explosive play downfield in the passing game. But, he's been hurt the last few weeks. I know he was healthy last week against the Bengals, but the Steelers have to do everything they can to try and get the most out of this offense. And that means using Justin Fields in whether it's specific packages, whether it's short yardage only, that he's got to be on the field. He's got to have a role this week because this offense has not been good enough for the last month to just keep that type of talent sitting on the bench cold.
You have to put him out there too and be willing to use him in the passing game as well too. Yes. You just cannot put him out there and have him run the zone read or you've got to be prepared depending obviously on the look that you get on defensive side of football. Look, they practice against Lamar Jackson all the time. They're used to kind of defending that stuff. So if you're putting him out there and just going to say, okay, either hand it off or run the zone read if somebody comes crashing down, you've got to be prepared to throw the football with him. One of the things maybe that and obviously Fields has missed a couple of games because of that abdominal injury and all, but maybe looking back, depending on how this game goes, is maybe they didn't put Justin Fields out on the field enough and let him throw in enough situations throughout the season, that they are kind of pigeonholing themselves to put him in situations that, especially throwing ones, that he other than circling back to earlier in the season, he hasn't had an opportunity to do. I think most people listening to this as well too, maybe, and obviously he's missed a couple of games down this stretch, 4-game losing streak and all like that. But maybe in that middle part of the season when you had both these guys healthy, maybe there should have been more of a concerted effort to give him 3, 4, 5 snaps a game.
I think there should have been, and I do wonder if you go back to week 12, that 3rd and 6 pass against the Browns late. I do wonder if that maybe not scared off some of the play calling and decision making from the Steelers, but maybe just showed the Steelers, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this, bringing Fields off the bench, asking him to throw deep late in a key spot. Because we haven't seen Fields throw the football, I don't think, since that moment. If we have it, I'm not recalling it, but they need to get back to 5, 6, 7 snaps for Fields, and like you said, it cannot just be read option or hand it off or design quarterback power, whatever it may be. He's got to be allowed to be a quarterback and have the full playbook at his disposal. I mean, it's not like he doesn't have any experience in this offense at this point. He had 6 games to start the year. I know he hasn't seen the field much since then, but they've got to open things up for him this week and let him be the quarterback he was early in the season if they utilize him this week.
All right, what about Mike Williams?
Yeah, that answer from Mike Tomlin kind of cracked me up in the moment. It's like, yeah, we're certainly open to utilizing him more. You probably should. Van Jefferson shouldn't be getting 41 snaps compared to 14 for Mike Williams. I know it's hard to get on a moving train. I get all of that. I understand where Tomlin comes from in that aspect, but when Mike Williams has an opportunity to make plays, more often than not, he's made the plays for the Steelers. He had that great 25-yard catch against the Bengals. You've got to get him on the field for more than 10 to 15 snaps a game, especially this week. I know that they like Van Jefferson, as a blocker and everything that he does offensively at this point, but he is not a ball winner at receiver. I think we had something Sunday. He had the lowest yardage output for any receiver with over 700 snaps. I mean, that's unfathomable. So you traded for Mike Williams for a reason. You have to utilize him more. You have to target him more. I want to see Arthur Smith this week call plays for certain players. I know that he gives Russell Wilson the freedom within the passing game to just read the field, take what's there, make the right reads. But I want to see more of an emphasis on getting George Pickens the ball, Mike Williams the ball. And Mike Williams can only see the football if he's on the field more than, a few snaps here and there throughout a game. So, yeah, this is do or die. The season is on the line. You lose and you're done. You got to put all the chips into the middle of the table and utilize Mike Williams as much as you can.
If you roll back to the game against the Bengals, George Pickens played 53 of 58 snaps. Van Jefferson played 39 of 58 snaps. Calvin Austin III played 38 of 58 snaps. Mike Williams played 13 snaps of 58 in this game, and Ben Skoranek played 5. And as I dug down earlier in the week here, Van Jefferson has now played 721 offensive snaps in 2024, 64% of the total offensive snaps on the season. He's caught just 24 passes for 276 yards and 2 TDs. Let that sink in a little bit. And what we had, let me see if I have that list here of players that I drilled down on Pro Football Reference here. Forget the criteria. I think I set it at offensive snaps of like over 700. Wide receivers dating back to forget how far this went back, 2002 or something like that. But wide receivers that logged at least over 700 snaps that had caught 25 or fewer passes in the season. There were just 5 of them that popped up on the list. TJ Graham in 2013 with Buffalo had 23 receptions for 361 yards. Nick Westbrook Ekine in 2022 with the Titans, 25 catches that season on 777 snaps. Jeremy Ross with Detroit, 709 in 2014, 24 catches there. Devray Henderson with the Saints going all the way back to 2012 had 22 receptions that season. Obviously, a lot of this was before teams had 17 game seasons. Van Jefferson was one of 5 on that list there. And, just recently, Alex wrote about like empty route running. And look, I'm not going to make this a bang on Van Jefferson, podcast and all like that. But, this was one of the worries going into the season, right? Josh, was the overall quality of depth of this wide receiver room outside of George Pickens, and God forbid should something happen with George Pickens throughout the season. And look, we went through all most of the offseason and on even up into the trade deadline. Brandon Ayuk, who was the Christian Kirk,
Adam Thielen.
I mean, there were several names bantered around that. Okay, the Steelers tried to trade for. The fact of the matter is okay. Good. It's like that Bart Simpson meme. Congratulations, you tried.
Yes.
What was the result? You did not. And yeah, I know you went out and got Mike Williams. Okay, bravo. But since going out and getting Mike Williams, what have you done with him? And I people can be pacified for those first couple of weeks. Okay, catch the moving train, yada yada. But any player that you were going to trade for by the trade deadline was going to go through that same adjustment period. But here you are, the last 4 games of the season, and you're still trying to get this guy. There was that one catch against the Bengals the other night, and it wasn't the deciding play of the game or anything like that, but it was Van Jefferson catching that ball on the right side. How many wide receivers break that tackle?
Yeah. Honestly, in recent years for the Steelers, a lot of them. And Van Jefferson, that just showed his limitation. He's not a contested catch guy. He's not going to break tackles. I don't think if I pull up my charting here, I don't think he had a single forced missed tackle on the year. We knew the limitation of him going in. And yeah, like you mentioned, Omar Khan did a really good job trying to find a receiver. It felt like he was, turning over every stone. But the fact of the matter is, like you pointed out, he didn't get it done when it mattered most. And yes, they added Mike Williams. Yes, he caught a touchdown to win a football game. That's great. That's very important. But we are now entering the wild card round, and the receiving core is still a massive issue for the Steelers because outside of George Pickens, they don't really have a ball winner. I know Calvin Austin has stepped up and made a lot of plays this year. Mike Williams, when he's been given an opportunity, has made some plays, but your number 2 receiver from a snap perspective is Van Jefferson. And that should tell everyone all you need to know at this point. I mean, they're so limited. And we knew that when did they sign Van Jefferson? In March. So we knew in April and May heading, through OTAs and into minicamp that, hey, the Steelers have a real problem at wide receiver 2. And it's really a shame that here we are on January 7th heading into the playoffs that, hey, guess what? They still have an issue at wide receiver 2. So it's really unfortunate. And, Mike Tomlin can say he's certainly open to utilizing Mike Williams more. I think the play on the field to this point, regardless of Williams struggling to maybe grasp the playbook or carve out that role with a new team, he's a proven NFL veteran. You just have to put him out there. I don't care if his route tree is limited or whatever it may be. Put him out there. Try and get him the football because he's your best option behind George Pickens at this point. And it's been baffling that he's been so underutilized. I think he has 9 catches in 9 games with the Steelers. Like that can't happen.
And obviously you go into this and you drafted Roman Wilson, and unfortunately his was injured in training camp, and then catching the train and all like that, and those things are going to happen. And even if Roman Wilson had made it all the way through training camp, made the 53-man roster, started to get some snaps, and made a guy, maybe let's say Scotty Miller, expendable there. What were you realistically going to get out of this kid as a rookie with this offense that you're running? Either you're probably just taking you're probably going to get about 20, 25 receptions, maybe a couple of big plays within there, but it probably wasn't going to be even enough, even going that route with a rookie, because he's a rookie in a new offense and still trying to find his way. So, and look, once again, you knew what the situation was going to be with him coming out of training camp and the injury that he had, and trying to get him up to speed at some point, and then obviously had the hamstring injury on top of it there that kept him sidelined even longer. What I'm getting at here is you had an opportunity to make a splash, and they went out and got Mike Williams. They just, in this game against the Ravens now, if I'm Baltimore, I'm doing my damnedest to not let George Pickens have the George Pickens kind of game that we just talked about we think that he wants to have. And if that is indeed the case, you're going to have somebody else, Pat Freiermuth, Mike Williams, Calvin, you're going to have these guys step up. And if there's ever a game to have Mike Williams out on the field for 35, 40 snaps, this would probably be it.
It has to be, but I think as we sit here right now, I have major doubts that it's going to be. I think you're still going to see a lot of the Van Jefferson, 35, 40 plus snaps. But yeah, you need Mike Williams. You need Calvin Austin. Last matchup, Calvin Austin had the 44-yarder down the sideline. So he has some splash plays in his bag against the Ravens. Pat Freiermuth has to have a bigger role in the passing game against the Ravens here. But I am concerned that at this point, not much is going to change. I think Tomlin, gave some lip service that, yeah, we're certainly open to it, but you're going to get to, live action when the quote unquote bullets are flying in a playoff game. And I think you're going to see the Steelers leaning on a guy that's been on the field quite a bit all year, and that's going to be Van Jefferson. And it's going to be rather frustrating to watch because he's not a guy that's going to win one-on-one matchups consistently and produce those splash plays that the Steelers are going to need. I know Russell Wilson has targeted him at times, and Van has made a few big plays this year. I think back to, I think it was a 43-yarder against the Bengals on the road. He had I think it was a 34-yard catch in the snow against the Browns. He's made some plays, but he is not a guy you want to trot out there as your number 2 in a must-win game. So Arthur Smith, Zach Azzani, Mike Tomlin, they have to find a way to get Mike Williams on the field for 30, 40 snaps this game.
All right, another talking point coming out of the Mike Tomlin presser on Monday. He was asked about you guys were 4th in rushing attempts this year, but near the bottom in yards per carry. What made that something that you wanted to continue to be such a big part of your identity, even if it wasn't necessarily always working? And obviously, you come out of the game against the Bengals. They just tried to run this thing time and time again. The blocking was absolutely atrocious overall. A lot of guys free running at the second level, making plays for the Bengals there. Mike Tomlin's answers getting dissected quite heavily in the last 24 hours. He says, for us, it's about playing to a personality that we prescribe to engineer victory, to possess the ball. And a component of possessing the ball is not only time, but managing risk. And obviously, there's less risk with running the football than throwing it. And sometimes that's a component of this discussion as well. So in other words, we want to run the ball to try to minimize risk factor. And even if we're not running the football well, that's the personality we prescribe to. And, basically we're going to throw enough rocks at this thing like we've done and hope our defense plays well, keep it close, get it into the fourth quarter, let TJ Watt make a play. And I'm paraphrasing here. A couple of plays on offense, get ourselves in position. And look, to whatever you want to say about this Bengals game, it did boil down to this team having to make a couple of plays on offense late in the ball game, get themselves in field goal position for Boswell to win the game. They did not do that. And then because you do not win the game, you do not make the plays at the end, it's a lot easier to go back through the entire game again and say, why did you continue to beat your head up against things when the running game wasn't working? What's your overall takeaway, Josh, from this question and answer?
The thing that caught my attention was the managing the risk and less risk running the football than throwing it. And I might be in the minority here, but I heard that from Tomlin on Monday, and it's like, do we not have as much trust in Russell Wilson at this point? I mean, it's not like Justin Fields is back there earlier in the year where it's, hey, let's limit his exposure in the passing game. Let's avoid the middle of the field like they did against Atlanta in the first week. That's where my mind went to initially was, wow, is there a little less trust in Russell Wilson at this point? I know he's had a lot of turnovers here down the stretch, but it's also, for me, Mike Tomlin is still stuck in that old school mindset of, hey, we're going to run the football, we're going to muck it up, we're going to have a rock fight. And I also recalled, if you remember, leading up to the Christmas Day game against the Chiefs linebacker Nick Bolton said, yeah, they're going to run it, and they're going to run it even if they're not running it well. And that's that's the Steelers' philosophy at this point. They're going to bang their heads against the wall, and they're going to look at it from a time of possession perspective. And it's frustrating because you spend all this time and money investing into the defense. You shouldn't be worried about, hey, there's less risk throwing the football. We're going to minimize the exposure for the other guy on the sideline to our defense. Like, you have this star-studded defense. You got to be able to trust them, and running it into a wall the way that they did and not throwing it much on first down or much at all. It put them in a really bad spot. The time of possession split was, again, very concerning. I think it was 38 minutes to 22 minutes, something around there, pretty similar to the Eagles game. Yeah, they can be a team that wants to run the football and wants to be the most physical team on the field, game in and game out. But when you're not having success, you have to be able to change it up. And the Steelers have not shown the ability to do that, especially here in this last month.
The kind of final, and look, yeah, once again, that deserves to be parsed throughout the week here, and it'll be interesting to see the game plan this week. I mean, to some degree, we'll see what the weather looks like come Saturday night as well, too. And obviously the Ravens know that they have to get their lean on their running game. Even if they can't lean on their running game, though, they have shown the ability to open it up and throw the football down the field with Lamar Jackson. But if you're not stopping their run, it makes it 10 times harder, whereas the Steelers are a lot easier to stop their run, and it puts more emphasis on the passing game there. The other aspect here is something we've talked about all season, the slow starts with this offense, on why they've experienced some of the slow starts they've had on offense. Mike Tomlin says, that's a good question. Well, yeah, that is a good question. It's one we've been asking all season with this team. He says, goes on to say, some of us, some of it has had to do with some of the people that we played. Some have done a nice job. Some of it has to do with us. Rest assured that we're working extremely hard to rectify it, and I'm excited about taking another whack at it this week. Well, Mike, you got one more. You maybe got one more whack of it this week. This team, as we've said numerous times, has zero opening possession offensive drives for touchdowns this year. I think I went back and even looked at the second half, because Alex and I talked about this the other day. I think this team has 3 opening possessions of the second half that have resulted in touchdowns out of 17 games. I mean, at least it's more than 0. But once again, if you look in totality, open it up the second half, open up the first half, this would be an excellent outcome here to finally see this team move the football down the field on their opening possession and get a touchdown. Tomlin was asked on if their slow starts on offense raises alarm about their game plan. He says, I don't know I'd use the term alarm, but certainly we're analyzing all components of it in an effort to remedy it. I would use the term alarm.
Yes, I would as well. And when he said that Monday, my initial thought was, what has to happen for you to be alarmed? This isn't a 1-year thing with these slow starts offensively. This is a multi-year thing dating back to Matt Canada, and Tomlin talks about wanting to analyze things and looking at trends. When do the Steelers become alarmed with these slow starts on offense? I'm not asking for 14, 21 points in the first quarter, score all the first 3 possessions of the game. That would be very nice. Some teams do that in this league, but when did the Steelers and Tomlin become alarmed with the offensive starts the way that they've gone on this year and over the last few years? Like, what level of incompetence from the offense early in games gets you to alarmed? Because we should be at this point right now with the Steelers. It's been ugly. I don't know how many drives have gone 3 and out to open games, but as you mentioned the stat, they haven't scored an opening drive touchdown all year. It's not just a 1-year thing. It's not a new offensive thing with Arthur Smith. This has been occurring for multiple years. It's a major problem. And it would be nice for that to change this week, but I have my doubts that it will.
At least give us a first quarter touchdown. Only 3 of those on the season as well, too. And look, if you start slow, you can start slow against the Ravens Saturday night if you're only get down maybe 6-0. All right. Mm-hmm. But if you get down 10-0, 14-0, this thing could really snowball because the Ravens are that good of a team on them. So if you get off to a slow start, you better hope that your defense does not get off to a slow start, and you keep this thing close. If Tomlin has his druthers, this thing would be 7-6 or 10-7, even Ravens at halftime. It would be probably a huge win for the Steelers if they get this thing into a 1-possession, 3-point game going into the second half, shorten the game that way. But, we'll definitely see. All right. Was there anything else that stuck out in the Mike Tomlin press conference that caught your attention, Josh?
No, those were really the big ones. I know he did mention the concern about stopping the tight ends in recent weeks. We've talked about the miscommunication from that Ravens game ad nauseum at this point, and obviously it occurred against Travis Kelce. But it seems like they kind of shored that up. I know that he also mentioned the lack of playoff success is his bags alone to tote. I appreciated that answer from him, but it's still a reflection of his teams at this point. But I think we hit everything, honestly.
Look, if he goes out, no matter what it looks like, even if you lose this game, 10-9, that streak extends and it's magnified. The fan base is already upset, as it is. You got to go all the way back to 2016 for the last playoff win for this team. I don't want to say that the screams can't get louder than what they are already at this point, but they will, at this point. This is a game for Mike Tomlin to try to get the proverbial, monkey off of his back, and it's a tough one at that, especially the way this season, there will be all the talk about 5-game losing streak to end the season, this team totally collapsing. We'll have talk about Omar Khan not properly, the front office not doing enough to have, at least on the offensive side of the football, ready to go. I mean, everything imaginable and more will be talked about. However they lose this game, should they wind up losing it here. All right, the other piece of news to kind of come out on Monday, we were expecting this leading up to it. Arthur Smith's name being thrown around as part of an interview candidate for some of these head coaching openings. I think, and I haven't really dug down deep this morning, I think there's 5 openings at this time around the NFL, and I think we're kind of waiting to see what the Raiders are going to do. But Arthur Smith's already, his name has been attached to the Jets and the Bears at this point. I think we, kind of leading up to this, the mumblings and reports were expect Arthur Smith to get interviews for whatever head coaching openings wind up being. How concerned are you about him getting a job? And B, a lot of people are screaming, go, take him. I think overall Arthur Smith has a passable grade on the season, considering what the personnel that he's had to deal with here. By no stretch of the imagination am I trying to put him up for a Coach of the Year award or anything along those lines. And on the flip side, though, I don't think he's done enough in his one season in Pittsburgh to deserve a head coaching job. So where are you on all this? I think we've been told to expect he will get more than just these 2 interviews that are out there. But overall, I would be a bit surprised if he ends up getting a head coaching job.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you are. Like, I think obviously some of the personnel he's been handed offensively, he's been a bit handicapped, especially at receivers. We talked about, he did a really nice job early in the season with Justin Fields, getting him to play some of his best football, keeping control of the football, not turning it over, making good decisions. At one point, this offense was a top 10 scoring offense once Russell Wilson stepped into the lineup. So I think he has a passable grade. I don't think it's a situation where if he gets another job, if he gets a head coaching job, it's not a massive loss for the Steelers, in my opinion. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets the Jets job. I mean, this is a guy that he interviewed in 2021 for the head coaching job in New York before he got the Falcons job. The Jets went out of their way this offseason to try and bring him in as an offensive consultant to kind of oversee the offense in New York. He was going to be the quote unquote de facto OC in New York. That was Diana Rossini's reporting in July. Woody Johnson has liked him from everything I've read, everything that I've seen. He spoke highly of him back when the Jets interviewed him in 2021. So that's kind of the one where that would be an off the wall hiring, but again, it's the Jets. So is it all that surprising? The Bears one, I feel like they're just casting a very wide net, and he's a former head coach. He's a quote unquote offensive mind. It feels like they're doing their due diligence there. I don't think Arthur Smith deserves a head coaching job for the work that he did in Pittsburgh, if that makes sense. But yeah, I have a weird feeling that he lands that Jets job.
Be careful what he wishes for, especially in New York and that media. And we'll obviously have to see what happens with transpires with Aaron Rodgers and all like that. You seem to think that he has more of a chance of landing a head coach job than I do. What other jobs are open right now? The Saints,
the Jags, and oh boy, the Bears, the Jags, the Saints.
We're missing Jets. one other in there that's open right now, and I'm not talking about. Let me look through the teams here real quick. Jaguars. Oh, the Patriots.
That's right. And then depending on what happens, it could be the Cowboys job as well. So because Mike McCarthy could interview with the Bears. I think is he out of contract at this point?
I think they have that negotiating period that runs through, I don't know, what is it, today, Friday, or something like that. But okay. we should know an outcome of that fairly soon here.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some situations out there that I could see, Arthur Smith could, with his familiarity with the AFC South, could land that Jags job. He hasn't gotten an interview there, but it wouldn't shock me if his name pops up there as well. But
all right, I'm just seeing a list right now. Adam Schefter is releasing an interview request post from the Jaguars, and Arthur Smith's not on this list. Kellen Moore, Todd Monken, Joe Brady, Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, Aaron Green, Patrick Graham, and Robert Saleh. So unless and this looks like it was a release from the this is a release from the Jaguars as well too. So Arthur Smith's not if there's one place I would maybe like to try to go, it would probably be, if I'm Arthur Smith, it would be the Jaguars because of the quarterback situation, kind of more of a muted media situation in that town. And to me, if I was Arthur Smith, that would probably be the primest landing spot right now. But his name, at least right now, is not on that list for them. It doesn't feel like he's going to have a shot at the Patriots job. I don't know what the Saints are going to do, and then we'll obviously wait and see what I know a lot of teams. The Colts have already talked about they're bringing their people back. Who are a few other teams that
the Dolphins released that they were bringing everybody back.
Cleveland, no changes in Cleveland, no changes in Tennessee. The Cincinnati Bengals are obviously standing pat with Zach Taylor. Seattle standing pat. Atlanta standing pat. I guess Arizona's standing pat. San Francisco's probably standing pat. Carolina's standing pat, and it sounds like the Giants are standing pat. So
Giants.
There's probably not going to be the amount of head coach openings that many speculated several weeks ago. So. To kind of put this segment to bed, it might be Jets or bust for Arthur Smith.
Yeah, I think so. And I know that there was, I think we had a story yesterday on Steelers Depot that I think it was Mark Cabali said Arthur Smith needs like a perfect situation. I understand that, but there's also only 32 of those jobs. And, you might not, if you pass on an opportunity like the Jets, you might not get another one, next year elsewhere. So, yeah, that's the one that I have circled that I just, like I said, I have a strange feeling that Arthur Smith might land that. So we'll see. But I don't think he's done a terrible job in Pittsburgh. I think he's done a good job elevating some things offensively with the personnel he's had. But I don't think it's a situation where if they lose Arthur Smith to a head coaching job, that it's something disastrous for the Steelers. So,
all right. And if he doesn't get a job, he's back next year, right?
Yes, he should be. Yes.
All right. Let's see where what have we missed news-wise? I guess Ravens side of the things, we talked about Zay Flowers. I think they're also watching, who is it? Justice Hill. Who else is on the injury report to watch for the Ravens?
I think Zay Flowers is the big one. Justice Hill, and then Oh, was there a cornerback banged up? I got to look at their.
Yeah, it seems like there was one other name that we'll kind of be watching throughout the week there. But the first injury report for the Ravens should be out later today. So stop by SteelersDepot.com. And in fact, Josh will probably be the one writing that up later this afternoon here. Okay, Bengals, Steelers here. Kind of, all 22 reels didn't drop until yesterday afternoon. I've rolled through a lot of it offensively. The thing that stuck out the most to me, the blocking was just absolutely horrendous in the running game overall. There was some clear missed assignments within that. Alex has a nice clip of the linebackers running free in some situations against the run game. The tosses once again really went nowhere with this. The running game was abysmal, except for maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 runs overall. I think a couple of them, one of them, Jalen Warren was associated with. There was a hard fought, I think, run by Najee Harris, and I think Jalen and Najee maybe had one more. But once again, the consistency of the run game, just pitiful overall. This might have been for pound as a collective group of the offensive line, especially in maybe this 4-game skid that this team has had, that the run blocking was just horrendous.
Yeah, it was very bad. It didn't start well on the first drive, and then I think it was that second drive when they marched down for a touchdown, aided by some penalties from the Bengals. I think that was the drive. Najee Harris had 8 carries for 34 yards and a score, and then after that he had 4 carries for, I think, 2 yards. So yeah, that was just a microcosm of the game. The offensive line, they really struggled. Alex does have that clip. There are so many linebackers and just defenders running free at Najee and Jalen Warren in the backfield, and I don't care who you have back there. That is not a recipe for success in the run game. So it was very disappointing to see that. And that's kind of been the case here over the last few weeks. They've had some success at times running the football, but more often than not, you're going to have some missed assignments, some guys running free. And it was concerning for a young group that should have been hitting their stride together, late in the season, to have that type of performance, especially after 10 days off, was very concerning. And it wasn't just the run game either. Pass protection was very, very poor. Dan Moore, from the bye week on, I mean, just a completely different player. I think he allowed 10 sacks in the second half of the season. It was a mess from him. Broderick Jones wasn't very good, as we talked about earlier. Mason McCormick had some struggles. Just a really poor performance from the offensive line, and that's concerning entering the playoffs where, the weather might not be the greatest. They're going to have to run the football consistently at a successful rate to have any real shot.
The Titans have fired general manager Rand Carthon. This is coming across this morning.
Whoa, he's still got didn't he just sign a 5 or 6 year deal?
Yeah, what this offseason is, what this last season is first? Right?
I think so, yeah, because
Vrabel was out.
Yes, and they brought in a new GM who then, Tennessee making moves for the number 1 pick, huh?
Yeah, evidently Deion Sanders doesn't like Rand Carthon, I guess, right?
maybe Deion's going to be the GM in Tennessee. Who knows?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay, so that's coming across right now. And look, you talk about the run game, you got to throw the tight ends blocking within the offensive line. There was a couple of mix-ups within that too. One snap that I noticed too, I think on a split zone. If you go and look at Michael Pruitt on the right side coming, look at the way the offensive line gets off the ball, and look at kind of the delay in Rand Carthon coming up. I mean, not Rand Carthon. I'm watching the TV right now. Michael Pruitt coming off the football. Just threw off a little bit of the timing of the play as well too there. So I think regardless of what happens with the rest of this season here, the Steelers need to look at their offensive line coach Pat Meyer, and maybe even the tight ends coach as well here too, because and Alex and I have talked about this quite a bit throughout the season here. Even though this is a youthful, more experienced underdeveloped offensive line. This unit has played enough together at this point right now that you would expect it to be further along than what it is at this point of the season here right now. And I think you got to take a long, hard look at that overall at this point, the way this offense, because look, this unit has played together quite a bit at this point. They've got, obviously several draft picks involved within this thing. It just should be further along. And I think you got to look at the coaching, and, I think it starts with Pat Meyer there.
I think so too. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this is a group that should be ascending at this point in the year. They've been able to play together quite a bit. It's been the same starting lineup for most of the second half of the season, I believe. They should have been able to take off here and start seeing some improvements. And instead, final week of the regular season, we saw them take a significant step backwards in both the run game and in pass protection. And, Pat Meyer, he's been a guy that's been under fire the last 2 years, and then rightfully so at this point. Some of his guys are regressing. Dan Moore, Broderick Jones had a tough second year. I thought he's been a little better in the second half of the season, but it did not start well for him. He's had some struggles. He might change positions next year if Dan Moore walks in free agency, so that's something to watch. But yeah, this group has gone backwards here late in the year, and it's very concerning. And the one guy that you can, look to make a change is Pat Meyer, and that could be tough for the Steelers to go into the offseason maybe needing to make a change there at offensive line coach. But the play on the field from his unit has not been good enough, and unfortunately, that's this business. And he's been a guy that was a questionable hire when they brought him in because of how his tenure in Carolina ended, and we're seeing some of those same issues here in Pittsburgh, even with the Steelers investing in that offensive line group the way that they have.
All right, passing game in the game against the Bengals. There were very, very few bright spots. You had the deep pass down the right side to Mike Williams sort of early in the game. There you had a couple of nice route combinations that got Pat Freiermuth the football within there. There were some throws on some of the out routes to Calvin Austin and Pat Freiermuth that I thought Russell Wilson should have connected on, had separation, both those over to the right side of the field that I thought Russell Wilson could have been better on. There was around the midpoint of the game, there was a situation where I think Russell Wilson ended up checking the football down underneath to Najee Harris, where you see beyond the second level, George Pickens running a dig. The pocket was still formed within there. There was plenty of time. I want to say maybe that was against a quarters coverage type situation, if I'm remembering correctly. But I think Russell Wilson turned down, didn't give it enough time. He kind of, for no reason, really just kind of panicked and dumped it down underneath, I think, to Najee Harris in that situation there, where if he would have just seen the field better, he would have had more than he would have had an explosive play on a right to left dig on George Pickens there. I didn't feel that overall Russell Wilson did a good job of seeing the field in totality there. They got themselves, obviously, there was one, the last play of the first half where I think it was 16 seconds. They had to run all verticals on that. I think got sacked on that play. Took an inopportune sack in the second half, but I think they recovered on that. I think Russell Wilson scrambled. You had the George Pickens drop in there that you were able to overcome on that drive. You had the deep down the field pass to George Pickens that I thought that he ultimately dropped that he should have had. That on the flip side, Russ could have probably put that out there another foot better, but we've seen George make those catches before that he should have had there in that situation. You look at the passing chart overall, not overly surprising for Russell Wilson. A lot of shorter stuff out to the edges, very few. You obviously had the completion down the field to Mike Williams. Other than that, you had a couple of throwaways. Once again, no, kind of an alarming amount of throwaways, I think, overall, especially in the second half of this season for Russell Wilson. Look, you obviously like the football thrown away and out of danger than making a mistake in an interception or anything along those lines. But there have been, it feels like in the second half of the season, particularly this 4-game losing streak, where you're just getting wasted plays in that situation there. The protection wasn't great. I think once again you saw Russell Wilson bailing from a couple of clean pockets, turning down other instances with some clean pockets in this one as well too. Could the play calling obviously schematically been better on this? Absolutely yes. And then I think you fast forward to specifically the last drive of this game. You start off with a first down pass to Najee Harris that went, absolutely nowhere within that drive. You followed up with Russ scrambling in a situation where he should have thrown the football away, getting tackled and losing a lot of play time on that. Then you get into that kind of the double move situation to George Pickens, and going back and look at that again, I just think Russ put that ball in a bad space there. You've got to at least give George Pickens a chance to make that catch on that play in that situation. It wasn't anywhere close. And then you follow it up on the last play of the game offensively, where you have an opportunity to hit Pat Freiermuth. Pat should have caught it. I don't know how much more yardage he goes in that situation. It feels like he's running away, I think, from the linebacker in that situation. I don't know if the linebacker tackles him right away or not, or if Pat maybe gets 10, 12, more yards. And even so, if he gets tackled, do you have enough time to go up and spike the football and maybe get a long field goal attempt off by Chris Boswell? But you do boil it down to all the mistakes that this team had offensively. There was a chance to make a couple of plays on that final drive to get in a field goal situation to win a game, and they didn't do it. All right, that's a lot of words by me. Your thoughts on the passing game?
Yeah, it was abysmal. Russell Wilson had a really rough game. As you mentioned earlier, he's just not seeing the field well. I don't think he's seen the field well in the last month of the season. Maybe that's, some schematics from what the defense is doing. I think it was Troy Aikman that said on the call that the Bengals were kind of rotating late, right before the snap, and it was confusing Russell Wilson at times, and that's a little concerning, especially with a 36-year-old quarterback with the experience that Wilson has. But yeah, the throwaways were concerning. Some of the accuracy issues that missed to Pickens late there. I think it was on that 3rd and 14 double move, right after the inexplicable scramble, stay in bounds, and then take a bad sack. Had just one of the worst misses Russ has had all year. On the previous drive, there was a 3rd and 1 where George Pickens was wide open past the sticks on an out route. I think he had the cornerback turned completely around. Russ looked at him, didn't pull the trigger, and then I think he ended up basically chucking it up for Pickens, who ended up going down the sideline, but it was nowhere close. I think we had even commented in the chat, just throw it up again. It's some of this stuff just wasn't there. I think it really comes down to him not seeing the field well. I know Pickens had some of the uncharacteristic drops, but this passing game just feels stuck in the mud here this last month or so, and a lot of it goes back to some of the protection issues, but some of the issues at the quarterback position as well. That he's I think it was the Ravens coordinator who said Russ is that 3-pointers and layups. There's really, that's all it is. Nothing intermediate that we saw on Hard Knocks. And that's something that we knew coming into the year. And once he took over as a starting quarterback, it wasn't really an issue at times because that deep ball was working. But this last month or so, it's been chuck it deep, hope for a big play, or he's going to check it down, and defenses have figured out how to handle it. So it's been tough to watch, and it's been especially tough to see a quarterback with his experience and his abilities not be able to see the field clearly enough in some of these moments. And it's really hindered the Steelers, and it did again on Saturday night, and it cost them.
I think, yeah, as especially in this last 4-game stint here, it feels like he's trusting it. He's not trusting his offensive line as much. There are obvious situations I think throughout the season where he's bailed and stuff like that, but it really felt being magnified as of late of him kind of not trusting his offensive line as much. And I mean, it's easy to point out guys that you think are wide open, but I mean, if you go back and look, I think it's like 23:30 is the timestamp on the All-22 reel about that play of George Pickens on the dig type situation in the pocket and on him just inexplicably just kind of rushing that thing out, getting the check down in there. He's look, you don't need Russell Wilson to throw for 400 yards to beat the Ravens on Saturday night. But you obviously you're going to need more than 148 yards passing, and he was just barely over 50% in this game. And the sacks and all, like the 4 for 29 sacked in this game. Once again, they only had the one explosive play in this game as against the Bengals as well too. So this it Russell Wilson, it feels like he's lost a little bit of money throughout these last 4 games here, and the only way he's going to recapture a little bit of that is a good game against the Ravens here, and then obviously see where it goes from there in the playoffs if they were to get the win here. All right, flipping over to the defensive side of football here. If you look at this in totality of the game, specifically statistically, it kind of passes the sniff test, if you will. The Bengals were 5 of 13 on third down. What were they in the red zone? One of 4 over there. Obviously, they didn't have Chase Brown in this game. They were still able to get a little bit done. The Bengals were in the running game enough overall. You had Chase on Trice for a lot of the game there. While you're singling him up, letting him go single on the outside there on that touchdown. Didn't make a lot of sense overall. Alex and I hit on that. I think they only allowed one explosive play in this game. Was it? What was that?
I think was that the Chase back shoulder catch on Trice there in the second half? It was just good throw, good catch. I think that's what it was.
I think they're only showing that as a 19-yard.
Okay.
Maybe they changed. Let's see here. I think they changed the yardage on that one. There they have that now. Chase as 19-yard completion. I could have sworn that was, in fact, I think I got notes. You ought to see this place, Josh. It looks like
I thought that was a 20-yarder initially, and it was just a good throw and catch. But now I'm struggling to figure out what the other explosive play was.
I tabulated the Steelers' explosive plays. I don't think I had ran through, but I could have sworn that they had one explosive place in this game. So looking back at the game book, maybe they did change something. Their longest pass plays, or their longest plays in total, were 19 yards deep left to Chase. They had a Higgins for 18 yards down the left-hand side. That was that nice throw and catch over there where initially I thought maybe Higgins had pushed off on that, but I don't think he did. They had that kind of that in-breaker to Gesicki. I think that was the one he was lined up on the right against Deshaun Elliott.
Yes, that was the first drive. Yep.
Early in the game. That went for 16 yards. And they had a couple of plays for 15 yards, one to Higgins and one to Chase. So, look, if you would have told me, regardless of the outcome on this, the Steelers did not allow an explosive pass play in this game. They went. The Bengals were one of 4 inside the red zone. The Bengals were 38% on third down. They were 0 for 1 on fourth down. They sacked Joe Burrow 4 times for 31. If I had not watched the game, I mean, you take that, right? And you hold them to 19 points on the board.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you said all that going into Saturday night, I would take that, and I would think the Steelers would have won that game. But again, you get off to a slow start on both sides of the football. I mean, that first drive from Cincinnati was so incredibly easy. It felt like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Burrow was getting the ball out quick, trusting his guys to run after the catch. There was a lot of room consistently. Yes, the Steelers adjusted, but I mean, that first drive ends in a touchdown where the Steelers leave Trice on an island against Chase. And after that, I thought, the defense as a whole played relatively well. I thought that the secondary, there were no miscommunications. They kept a lid on everything. They were passing things off well. I thought, some of the blitzes of Cam Sutton off the edge were a bit puzzling, but yeah, the way that they kept a lid on things against the Bengals offense, especially considering what the Bengals offense had been doing the entire month of December, was pretty impressive. But it wasn't enough because, again, the Steelers lost and the Bengals put up 19 points. They were able to get into the red zone 4 different times. It's not enough. And I think that was a microcosm of how the season ended for the Steelers.
All right. And once again, you get Joe Burrow, and we've talked about this on the pod a few times there, not getting Joe Burrow on the ground 4 or 5 times a game doesn't necessarily add up to a win. You got to come away with the football from him a couple of times there. And once again, the ball was on the ground a couple of times. And they obviously did not get it. They did have what was the takeaway total in this one? They intercepted him once, right?
Yeah, it was 2-1. Bengals turned it over twice. So,
right.
Yeah, I think it was the Burrow interception and then the punt.
Right.
Off the player's foot. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I thought the defense played pretty well. I think, obviously, as we mentioned at the top, Cam Hayward in his flu game was fantastic. TJ Watt didn't record a stat at all, but I thought that guy was very good rushing the passer. He had the strip sack taken away by a penalty. I thought that this team defensively was pretty solid after that first drive. They were dialing up blitzes and getting pressures on Burrow. I know that the Bengals, were able to run the football at times and stay ahead of the chains with Khalil Herbert. But overall, I mean, there's not a ton to complain about here with the Steelers defense, considering what we've seen from them prior to this game for the last month.
You look at, I like looking at the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, and I love the TOC stat that measures takeaways, explosive plays, and all like that. The Steelers, as you mentioned, won the turnover battle 2-1, but when it came to the explosive play battle, it was 1-1, 1-0 on that. So it ended up being a 2-2 TOCs battle on that. They needed two more explosive plays in this game, and maybe even one. If you complete, I hate to do this, but I mean, you even hear players and coaches talk about this. There's like 5 plays in every game that if you boil it down, if one side makes the plays, you probably win the ball game. If the Steelers make one more explosive play, maybe 2 on that final drive, they win the ball game, right?
Absolutely, yeah. If you hit that Pickens pass play from Russ Wilson, they're in field goal range, I believe. And
you definitely that one.
Yeah, Boswell, I don't want to say for certain, but I mean, 99% sure. I'd put a lot of money on it that he would drill that kick and they win that game. But it was there for the taking. And I know that a lot of people were upset with Tomlin's comments about not making the routine plays routinely, because that's just word salad in a sense after a loss like that. But you hit on one of those explosive plays, especially late in that game. The Steelers win this one, and we're probably preparing for Houston rather than Baltimore.
Now, the obvious thing is you just play better throughout the game and get that running game. The running game needed to be much better than what it was there. But yes, you should be disappointed. I mean, the 4 straight losses with this thing, with this team at this point, and you had a game that, the fact of the matter is, you had a chance to win it, but you did not win it. So now you go on the road to Baltimore. All right. Anything else to add on the what did the tackling report show?
Again, they tackled very well. 4 missed tackles matched what they did on Christmas Day. Just 2 misses on defense. One from Patrick Queen, one from Minkah Fitzpatrick. Neither resulted in a big play. But again, after missing 36 tackles combined in the Eagles and Ravens game, they missed 8 tackles in the final 2 games of the year. So they got that cleaned up. They got the communication issues seemingly cleaned up. So those are positives there. But they're just not getting some of these bounces right now. Again, they forced a fumble early in the game on Burrow. I think it was Patrick Queen hit him. And that ball popped out. They're not getting the turnover luck right now. So tackling well, communicating well, seemingly coming out of this one, but they got to get some of that turnover luck back.
Definitely against the Ravens. All right. We got several. Matt, we didn't get to any emails since the game ended there, and Lord have mercy, I got a bunch of them in here from listeners. So I think we got to address some of them today. You got anything else to add before we go down this path?
No, I do not. I'm ready for some of these listener emails.
All right, this one from Thomas Pure. Hello, Dave and Alex. I have observed Russell Wilson experiment to its conclusion. His repeated failures in Denver have manifested in Pittsburgh. His indecisiveness, prolonged ball retention, self-inflicted sacks. He says, we criticize Kenny for abandoning the left side, yet Russ engages in the same behavior. Neglect of the middle of the field. It is imperative to release Wilson, invest in Justin Fields with a 3-year contract, and grant him complete control of the offense without constant scrutiny. Fields' athleticism provides an additional dynamic that defenses must address. Extending Wilson's contract would signal to the fan base that merely reaching the playoffs is sufficient to maintain attendance. I was unaware that we celebrated playoff appearances with banners. I am deeply frustrated with the trajectory of this season. All right, this is exactly the kind of email that you would expect to get right now at this point. I think when you look at Russell Wilson coming in, here's something else that I have with Russell Wilson. Let's see, where is it here on the adjusted net? Russell Wilson had a combined 4.20 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat in the last 4 games. It was a combined 7.68 in the 7 games prior to that. Obviously, that 7.68 number looks apt. I mean, that might as well be the 9 something that Lamar Jackson has on the season when looking at it in relation to Steelers, advanced stat metrics. However, you look at these last 4 games, albeit 2 without George Pickens here. 4.20. I don't care what quarterback, unless you've got an exceptional good defense, you're not going to win some games. Thoughts on Russell Wilson as we head into this playoff game? And I don't want to look too far ahead, into the offseason, because we're going to have plenty of time to kind of digest this. But where are you at on Russell Wilson right now?
Yeah, I think we've seen his limitations here and some of the concerns that were coming out of Denver in the last 2 years here in this last month or so. I at this point, I still expect him to be back, but I'm very concerned with what I've seen. Defenses are starting to figure him out again. I mean, we've seen that within Hard Knocks, the 3-pointers and layups that we talked about. He really doesn't use the middle of the field, which that's been a problem in Pittsburgh for the last few years. It's not just a Russell Wilson thing. It's been in general with the scheme. I mean, I fully expect him back. I don't know how I feel about it at this point, but there are major concerns with his indecisiveness, his inability to see the field clearly, his tendency to hold on to the football and take some bad sacks. And I really haven't gotten past the way he handled that game late on Saturday on that final drive, scrambling and staying in bounds and then taking a bad sack and causing the Steelers to burn a timeout. And then you follow it up with a woeful miss on a play that was there. And it's very concerning. And I don't know that I want them to sign up to do that for another year or two. But we'll see what happens here Saturday night.
Coming into that 4-game stretch, I was thinking more along the lines that they would be probably potentially bringing him back, but like everybody else and most of these listeners and readers and all like that, I have become less convinced that maybe that ultimately will happen. Now we got some. Here's the thing: Russ has been kind of he has been as advertised coming into this anyway, as it turns out. Now, you could say that 7 point whatever adjusted net yards for passing attempt stat was more relegated to competition that they played and all like that. But I mean, he was still doing the things that we thought would be his high side within this. Push the football down the field to moon balls. That helps add to that helps gloss that stat on the high side. And on the flip side, there's going to be a lot of the check down situations. He ended up being, the team as a whole ended up being sacked 49 times. I think you look at both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields over the last couple of seasons, each were like sacked 50 times. He has shown good command of the offense at times. It's just, it has been, we have seen more of the negative things that we had scouted on him coming into this season, more so surface as the competition level has increased through these final 4 games. Now, once again, has he had the perfect component of weapons, at the wide receiver position to deal with? No. And you throw in the fact that 2 of those games you were without George Pickens on top of it. This is going to be, regardless of how he plays in this game against Baltimore, and even more so if he plays poorly, this will be a topic of discussion, the quarterback position, because Alex and I even talked about, a success this year for the Steelers was having a definitive answer at the quarterback position coming out of this season, even if whoever it is, either Russ or Justin Fields, and this team winning a playoff game. And I'm not sure we're going to get what we wanted on both of those things there. But rest assured, listeners, we will be talking about that going into the offseason. Let's go to oh Lord, there's so much angriness in here. Jeff Berg, Russ is 6-5 and Pickens ? The gloom, despair, and agony got somehow worse, he writes. Russ is 6-5 and we lose the next one. We're 6-6. It's of course a bit early to be talking about this, but is he worth re-signing for 2 more seasons? Pickens has 3 touchdowns this season and 12 in 3 seasons. Jamar Chase has 33. Is Pickens worth the money? That's another discussion we're going to have. He says, I say trade Pickens before the draft and give Fields a stopgap job used to save money from having lower cost quarterback and sign some free agent wide receivers, draft a wide receiver or 2, and start to look for your next franchise quarterback until then, until you find him. All right. I'll give you a quick kind of brief of where my mind has been at in the last, let's say, 48 hours here. And this is just loose at this point. I think it's real dangerous to sign back up for Russell Wilson on a multi-year deal of $30 million or more. If you do so, you better be very careful with the guaranteed money. You better make this with Russell Wilson where you can jump the ship with him after the 2025 season there. But what I am now leaning more to do, and obviously the next game and maybe a next game after that, if there is one in the playoffs, could slant me going back the other way right now. The quarterback free agent market, who knows how that's going to end up. Do you really want to go out and get another retread once again, whoever it is? We'll see what happens with Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers' name is probably going to be thrown out there. Name your favorite free agent veteran quarterback, whoever it is. How much better, first year in an offense, trying to tailor things along that way with him. I would be more apt to, and people aren't going to like to hear this part of it either, I'd be more apt to probably get Justin Fields back on a moderate price. Can I get him to where where the passing game is at least an adjusted net? Because look, I mean, his high side is probably his ceiling, and part of his ceiling is maximizing what he can give you in the run game. Hopefully, spreading things out more. Hopefully, making an impact on the run game as a whole. Can you at least get this guy to adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat of 6.5? Can you beefing up the defense even more to where you're going to win the share of the? I think it's out of the question to think that Justin Fields is going to come in and give you a passing game that has you talking about an adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat of 7 or more. Just call. I don't know. Maybe you feel different, Josh, when it comes to that. And if so, fine. But I think you got to try to reach the high side of him in the passing game, as unappetizing as that might end up being, maximizing the run aspect, the explosiveness of what he can give you in the run game, how that might impact the run game as a whole. Going out there, you obviously got to give him more weapons. We'll have the discussion about Pickens. I'm not convinced that you go out and sign up and throw a lot of money at him. And if you trade him, boy, you better bring in Justin Fields some weapons in the passing game, or else you're going to be back in the same boat that we're in this year. It is a very, 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 very concerning time, regardless of how this next 1 or 2 playoff games goes. When you look at this offense in totality, the defense is a lot further along. You might get in a situation where you have to build more around this defense, do a better job of adding weapons on offense, and then trying to play the rock fight game once again. But I mean, it is concerning from an offensive perspective. When you look at the quarterback position, when you look at not Pickens the player, but Pickens everything else,
right?
And moving forward with this team into 2025. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I think for me personally, where we're at right now, again, a lot depends on this playoff game, but I am more apt to bring back Justin Fields on a multi-year deal as kind of that bridge quarterback because of his age, his athleticism. I would trade Pickens this offseason. I'd rather not deal with, any contract negotiations, or you don't give him a deal entering his final year, then you have to deal with George Pickens, the potential free agent, and all that could come with that from a headache perspective off the field. But if you do that, you have to invest in a ton of weapons, and it's a good receiver class in the draft. There are some big names free agency wise that they could go after. But I'm more bring back Fields, let him be the bridge quarterback rather than signing up for multiple years of Russell Wilson at this point. Just because, again, that age, that athleticism Fields brings, I think he can do a little bit more within Arthur Smith's scheme. But like you mentioned, if you do that, you have to surround him with weapons. You cannot give him a George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Mike Williams, Scotty Miller receiver room and have Calvin Austin be your explosive play guy. Like, you've got to really invest in that room again and try to find that, honestly, that young money crew that they once had. Like, that would be ideal. You have all these young receivers that play off each other well. And like I said, it's a good receiver class to invest in here in this draft. So that's where I'm at right now. That could change coming out of the playoff game, depending on how Russell Wilson performs, what type of headspace George Pickens is in. But what I've seen this last month of the year, what I saw against the Bengals, I think I want Justin Fields to kind of be that bridge quarterback.
Here's the thing with the, and we talked about this at the start of the season. Look at what the Packers are spending in their wide receiver room. It's next to nothing, but they drafted well. They got good young talent. They obviously have a better quarterback situation in Jordan Love there, and that without a doubt plays a big part within all that. But you can win with a younger, inexperienced wide receiver room, but you just got to make sure that those younger players have talent. And the thing is if you send one of your young wide receiver, the best one that you have in George Pickens, out the door now, not only do you have to try to replace him, you're not going to replace all that in the draft. And a lot of people are saying, go get T. Higgins. And look, sign me up for T. Higgins. I'm just not convinced the organization is going to go out and do that. And I'm not convinced Cincinnati's going to let him walk. Cincinnati would be out of their ever-loving mind to split up those three. And Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow would be voting up Joe Burrow, if he's listening to this, and I know he's not, he would be all on board. He said as much as well too. He wants to keep that. But let's say T. Higgins does reach free agency there. He's going to be the top wide receiver prize on the free agent market. And how many times have we seen the Steelers go out and do that? It would have to be a shift in organizational mindset. They're more apt to go the 2 or 3 moderate price, way there. But look, regardless of who the quarterback is, and it probably should be one of Russell Wilson. Is there any other quarterbacks that tickle your fancy that may or may not be either tradable for or hit the free agent market? I mean, there's going to be a lot of talk about Will Levis, I guess, if something, what's going to happen with him. Who are some of the other younger quarterbacks out there that might be tradable for?
Nobody's really coming to mind. Like, I think the one name that's slightly intriguing, I use intriguing extremely loosely. Like, what's Mac Jones's status? I mean, that's a guy that's experienced. He's an accurate quarterback. He processes quickly. He's not athletic. I'm not like he's a guy that takes a lot of bad sacks too. But I mean, yeah, Will Levis would be a name just with the arm talent that he has and his age. I'm trying to think who else.
People are throwing around Geno Smith and all like that. See what happens with Geno Smith, and I think they've come out and said that they think that they're going to retain him and all. But and look, I think Geno is an underrated NFL quarterback overall. And I think he's had a good season. But when you look, you dive deeper into some of the things with him. He's 34. Going to be 35 in October.
Right.
Even so, his final adjusted net yards per passing attempt number was 5.93 this year. That's lower than the Steelers team, or I think number for the season this season here. So, and then plus once again, you're going to have to bring him in. Is he a 1-year fix? Are you convinced that bringing him in at the kind of the money is going to get you a deep playoff run? I'm not so sure it is. We'll see. Is Sam Darnold a product of the system and the coaching that he has in Minnesota?
I think so. But yeah, that's a name that's probably going to get a ton of money on the open market. I've had people ask me about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's had a chance to reset under Sean McVay. I think he played pretty well, if I recall, in Week 18 against Seattle.
David Carr's name's probably going to be out there. That's talk about.
That's who I was getting to. He, what happens there in New Orleans. Yeah, I mean, it's Andy Dalton in Carolina now that it seems like, it's not great out there. So your best bet is one of Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or both for another year. But yeah, there's no easy fix out there. There's nothing that really gets me excited at that position. What I do not want to see is Aaron Rodgers. I think that would be a disaster. But yeah, this team has got to figure out quarterback long-term. And maybe that's, whether it's this year or next year, moving up in the draft. If you're not high enough, being aggressive. We've seen them move up for a linebacker and an offensive tackle. They should be willing to move up for a quarterback, depending on what the asking price is, but they've got to find that long-term answer.
I mean, there's only a couple of, from what I've seen, you probably.
Yeah, not this year. Not this year. It's not a very good quarterback class. I'm not moving up for Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward. Maybe in 2026, Drew Aller, Arch Manning, depending. But again, that's going to cost a lot. So they've got to find out the quarterback situation this year. And I'm not opposed to them drafting one this year, not in the first round. Maybe day 2, early day 3. There are some guys out there that are worth attempting to develop, but yeah, the free agent market and the trade market right now at quarterback in the NFL for the Steelers is not looking good.
And it boils back to the things that Alex and I said at the start of the season. You hope to come out of here knowing which direction you want to go with maybe one of these two with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. But I mean, you you're really in a limbo. And the best thing that's probably happened with the Justin Fields stock is he hasn't played.
Right.
you know,
he had the 6 games, and everybody could talk themselves into, hey, look,
right,
6 games.
And you hit on a good point there. You can talk yourself into that right now, you know, especially the way things have gone in the last 4 games with Russell Wilson. It's very easy to talk yourself into, yeah, this team should let Russell Wilson walk, especially if he's wanting $30 million or more per season. Get somebody on a more moderate base 3-year contract like a Justin Fields, and then that's definitely it's easier to talk yourself into that right now than it is to sign up for Russell Wilson for 3 years at 30 or 30 plus million. Now, if Russell wants to consider a discounted price, which I'm not convinced he's going to be willing to do, maybe you can get both those guys, and then you can say, Russ, it's yours. It's your job until it's not. Right. And go that way. But even so, the totality of the two, you're probably still going to come out of the 2025 season just like that you're coming out of 2024 season.
Yeah, if Russ wants to take I call it a hometown discount, lack of a better term. Like if he wants to take $20 million a year and give the Steelers more money to throw at adding weapons and all that, yeah, I could be convinced of that vision entering 2025. But it just feels like if you run it back with Wilson and Fields or one of the two, you're going to go through the 2025 season. You're probably going to win 10 games. You're probably going to be in the playoffs, but then you're in the same exact spot you're in right now where you have no long-term viable solution. You have a massive question mark at the most important position in all of football. And it's not a tenable situation for the franchise moving forward because your defense is going to be older. We'll see what they do at receiver. So it's a huge issue right now, and they're kind of stuck in a hard place, because like we talked about, there's nothing out there via trade or on free agent market at this point that's a clear upgrade or all that more exciting. But again, you don't want to commit a ton of money in years to either one of these guys coming off of what they've shown. So it's a difficult spot. I do not envy Omar Khan here. But it'll be very interesting to see what they do because they've got some huge decisions to make moving forward.
All right, I hate to be all gloom and doom here, but it is a challenging time, especially from the God Almighty quarterback position for Steeler fans. It's quite a limbo right now. So anyway, we'll take a couple more here from names I don't recognize being in here a bunch. Max Schellenberger, thank you for the fantastic coverage. Tomlin caught a ton of heat for the Wilson Fields quarterback change in week 7. Now that there's a larger sample size of Russ, do you feel it was the right move? Russ commands the offense better, so I'm leaning yes, but Fields' mobility, athleticism would have helped in recent O-line struggles. Curious to hear your thoughts. Okay. At the time, yes, I do think it was the right move. And as the stats even show, up until the last 4 games ago, statistically, and tape too for the matter, it was good enough. You're winning games. You thought, okay, let's see if they can get through these final 4 games, win a couple of them, because they were obviously probably going to lose a couple of them. But after going through these 4 games, albeit 2 without George Pickens, albeit as a totality of the wide receiver position and the run game, not the sad one thing that's got to factor is a lot has got to factor into all this. And the O-line has not played well. They have not been able to run the football. That's only going to make a quarterback like Russell Wilson more at the top end of what his ceiling is. It is all concerning. At the time, looking back, do I think it was the right move to go with Russ? Yes. The last 4 games, as Josh and I just talked about, it is very concerning. He's leaning towards more. Look, you're not going to get your wish in this final. This is Russ's job to finish out here. The only thing maybe you hope for is maybe you get Justin Fields on the field for 4, 5, 6, 7 plays within this. You hope this team can block better up front, get some sort of running game going. But largely, At the time, I think Russ was the right decision. I think you made your bed. You have to lay in it now at this point moving forward. And I think there is a big question mark going into the offseason at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think at the time it was the right move. This offense needed more from the passing game, and they had always wanted to see what Wilson had. Still coming out of these last 4 games, I think it was the right move. I mean, we've seen this team at one point, they were a top 10 scoring offense. Yes, Russ was missing George Pickens for 2 of these last 4 games. But I, as much as I want to see Fields be the bridge guy next year moving forward, I don't know that Fields would have done all that much better than Russ did this last 4 weeks. So, yeah, I think it was the right move. I'm glad that Tomlin did it because I think it certainly added something to the Steelers offense at the time. And hopefully they can get back to that here in this wild card game. I know that's a big ask, especially from an offense that has struggled for the last 4 weeks, but it was the right move at the time, and it remains the right move now.
All right, let's go to Jordan Pearsall here for one more. Alex, I thought you were very harsh on the defense in the recap. Alex is not here to defend himself, but if we told the entire fan base that we would hold that amazing offense to under 20 points, everyone would have taken it. Yes, I agree. The defense still needs work on communication and leaving young guys like Corey Trice in vulnerable positions. But this game is 90% on the offense, no matter what the stats are. If you hold the Bengals under 20 points, you have to win that game. Now, in Alex's defense, he's been sick for several days now. He barely had I don't even think he got a chance to go back through the TV tape when him and I talked on Sunday morning there. I don't recall him being overly vicious on the defense overall. Josh and I just talked earlier in the game that earlier in this pod here that Jordan, I know Josh would probably agree with you as well too. You hold this offense under 20 points. If you would have told me they get 19 before the game, I would have taken it. And his other statement that this is 90% game on the offense. Yeah, I would agree with that. If there is any bright spot coming out of this game against the Bengals, it would be how the defense in totality. Now you can go play by play and dissect and find some problems, but in totality, yeah, you got Joe Burrow down 4 times in the game. You got the ball out, from him once. Unfortunately, you didn't land on it. You held them with 0 explosive plays. They were 1 of 4 inside the red zone. The tackling as a whole was good. You did a fairly good job on 3rd down. Yada yada. That opening drive maybe aside. Yeah, if there's anything that you're hanging your hat on that you hope you see again in this game against the Ravens, it's the play of the defense.
Yeah, I didn't really have any issues with the defensive performance outside of that first drive that we talked about. I honestly don't think Alex was all that harsh. I did think that there were some questionable coaching decisions, like putting Trice on an island with Chase as much as they did. I think you shared that stat right after the game in the chat from Next Gen Stats. Yeah, I think it was 9 routes and 64% of the time Chase had Trice on him. That was questionable, especially without much safety help. But yeah, other than that, they tackled well. It looked like they communicated well. I guess your only gripe would be not recovering the Patrick Queen forced fumble on Joe Burrow. I mean, you got to have some ball luck there, and they didn't. They weren't able to force that turnover. But yeah, I mean, holding them to 19 points, and 3 of those came after the Steelers couldn't get a yard in their own end. So I put that more on the offense than the defense. There's not much to be upset about with the Steelers' defensive performance, and that's a positive entering the wild card round.
All right, let me read that stat off. I pulled it back up from Next Gen. Corey Trice matched up against Jamar Chase on 32 of his 50 routes, 64% shadow rate on Saturday night, including 30 of 38 routes. 78.9% with Chase was aligned out wide. Chase was targeted 9 times with Trice as the nearest defender, hauling in 8 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown on those targets. Chase was only targeted 5 times with any other Steeler as the nearest defender, catching 2 of those targets for 16 yards. So, For the kind of player that, I mean, this is a Triple Crown winner, zero explosive plays, did have the longest of 19, did have the touchdown, but for a young kid like Trice, I mean, that's a hell of a game to cut his teeth on, and I thought the tackling was fairly well overall. You give me that stat ahead of the game, probably going to take it.
Yeah, you take 10 receptions, 96 yards for Jamar Chase, considering what he's done all season long, and knowing that you have a young cornerback still getting his legs underneath him in the NFL. I think you take that, but I think it was a little questionable that at times they left him on an island and were giving safety help to T. Higgins on Joey Porter Jr. But yeah, I mean, it's just the way it goes. That's what makes the Bengals so darn challenging, is having those two types of weapons. You can't cover them both, consistently, especially when you got Joe Burrow back there, calling signals out and making throws. But that's really the only gripe you could have with what the Steelers did on Saturday night, and for me, that's promising.
All right, I've been able to drag you through the mud for about 2 hours here, I think. John, this might be the longest one you and I have done together, I think.
I think so. Yeah, we've had maybe an hour and a half in the off season, but this might be the longest one.
All right. We obviously miss Alex. Hope Alex gets better here soon. We're working his ass off. It's our own fault why he's sick there. But Josh, it's good to talk to you again. I really look forward to you going back down to the Shrine Bowl, and you're going. Did we send you? We send you to the Combine? No or no?
Not this year. Not this year.
Okay.
It'll be Joe and Jonathan, I believe. Maybe one more.
And Ross, I think maybe.
That's right. Yeah.
But look forward to pre-draft coverage, and obviously you're the first quarterback up off the bench whenever we need you. Appreciate it. You've done these long enough. You do a great job at it. I love you like a brother. 9 years. Where's 9 years gone? But seriously, certainly do appreciate you sitting in for Alex today. Give everybody your Twitter handle to get in arguments with you on.
I am by Josh Carney on Twitter. Trying to keep the arguments to a minimum at this point since everyone's so heated. But you can find me there. And I appreciate you calling me off the bench here. It's unfortunate it came in this circumstance, and hope Alex, rests up and heals up here quickly. Hopefully we can do this again here, and the Steelers find a way to win Saturday night.
All right, absolutely. Alex, we miss you. Love you. Get well soon. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Sorry we didn't get to your email this show. There was several in there that we didn't get to, but we had a lot to cover today. And Alex and I should be back on, I think, Friday to preview the Ravens wild card game and get you ready for all the weekend football on the way. You can, let's see, if you want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar. Follow the directions that way. Hop on Twitter. Thank Josh for coming on with me today on short notice. Certainly do appreciate that. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex, and today, Josh Carney.